All right, here we go. The Jordan Peterson Jubilee video. Let's see what kind of mess this is.
A Christian.
You say that. I haven't claimed that.
Oh, what is this? Is this Christians versus atheists?
Don't be a smartass.
Either you're a Christian or you're not. Which one is it?
You're really quite something, you are.
Aren't I? But you're really quite nothing. Right, you're not a Christian.
Okay, I'm done with him. Hello there. I'm Dr. Jordan Peterson. I'm a clinical psychologist, a professor emeritus.
We know who you are. You're ex-benzo addict.
My first claim, atheists reject God, but they don't understand what they're rejecting.
All right. Wait, the claim was atheists reject God, but they don't understand what they're rejecting. All right. Ring around the rosy.
Good afternoon, Dr. Peterson.
How are you doing?
So this claim here that atheists don't know what they're rejecting. My background is in studying to become a traditional Catholic priest, daily mass, daily rosary, going on long retreats, deep into the magisterium and biblical hermeneutics, like I was thoroughly in it. And it seems like I do know what I'm missing. Is there something that I missed over years of study, both this issue formally and living out religion? So
this guy is a Christian. This is like probably what white people get. It's like the ego in them is that they think that like there's only Christianity, like there's this one religion, and if Christianity doesn't work, then it's like nothing works. Whereas all Abrahamic religions are wrong, like provably on science. First off, they make you they make you circumcise yourself based off what? Because God said so. Interesting. Like the whole trope of mankind ruins religion is literally Abrahamic. It's literally the name is of a guy, Abraham, and his whole thing, So this whole idea that like, I was a Christian for all these years and I didn't find anything in it, and so it must not work, is like, no, you guys simply just chose a religion that teaches you to cut baby dicks and teaches you that sacrificing your children is okay, that the whole world is linear, that who cares about this life because then you're going to die and maybe you'll go to purgatory and maybe you'll go to heaven or maybe you'll go to hell. Like the fact that these are critical ideas of your religion and there's no actual spiritual discipline except more of like, it's more of a law than spiritual discipline and evolution of the human, which is why these Western religions fail to bring their people to self-actualization. And so this guy's basically, I guarantee his whole argument is just going to rest on that. Like, I never felt it. I never did anything, blah, blah, blah.
Well, you obviously feel that you missed something when you were practicing for the priesthood. Your aim was off then. So there's always the possibility that it's still off now.
what was off about my aim in the first place?
I don't know. That might take a long time to figure out. But
then it seems kind of like this no true Scotsman type of fallacy in which you're the arbiter of people's aims and how they understand those aims to be. How is it that you can claim that people don't know something that you know about their life despite not having met them?
This is such a
waste
of a time
just
argument.
Like the atheist.
This is such a waste of a time argument. Like, oh, now we're just going to debate our intentions if, like, I knew what I was talking about. And because Jordan Peterson is also, like, claims to be a Christian, quote-unquote claims, this whole argument is just a bunch of idiots talking about a religion that is provably, like, everything Christopher Hitchens said about... Here's the issue, right? It gets down to a simple thing. If you can prove Judaism is stupid... and it has no scientific backing, no real evidence of a spiritual discipline to get to some higher level of human being, then it basically invalidates every other iteration. It invalidates Islam and it invalidates Christianity because they all build upon each other. And so Christopher Hitchens has the best takes on all these things about why. And it's also a shame because the West, like... in universities today, they still haven't touched the surface on Eastern philosophy, Eastern religions, Dharma specifically, especially like Sikhi. They haven't ever gotten into it and gone past it. Even though Sikhs make up more than Jews in the world, they just don't have the literature there to really show people a compare and contrast.
This claim that there's no God is a generic claim. In your case, it would have to be specified more, and I'm not claiming to understand what was going on in your mind, but my experience with atheists is twofold. is that they have a very reductive notion of what constitutes God, let's say in the Judeo-Christian tradition. And they've often been hurt by someone who was religious or by the religious enterprise or perhaps by God himself, so to speak, and that's left them with an animus.
But I think that you have a reductive view of what atheism is. You've defined religion so broadly to include any sort of having aim in life, any sort of cultural archetypes, or having a metaphorical substrate. And atheism to you is a very specific type of like 3 people in the world that are these Raskolnikov type of, they want to get away with a perfect murder. It seems like you have the reductive view of what an atheist is.
Well, let's start with your claim. How do you define the God that you're rejecting? Like, what is God to you? You studied in the church, you found that unsatisfactory. How would you characterize what you rejected?
I think the average Christian believer, when they say that they're Christian and they believe, they mean some sort of God that is all-powerful, all-perfect, is somehow involved in the matters of this world, and that we look to them through wisdom and with the Logos incarnate in Christ. And it also seems like you don't believe in religion in the...
Yeah, so this guy's basically just denying a creator God, which is like the Christian God, because the way they explain God is that, you know, God is literally sitting up there watching his children, quote unquote, human beings. And he's like, yeah, I don't buy that, which is like, yeah, like Eastern, like Buddhism is like, quote unquote, almost like secular spirituality, you can say. And then Sikhi does not believe that as like the basis of what God is either. The claim of God in Sikhi is that like it just all is God. It just is. You are part of it and it is part of us. It just exists. There is no God. It's not even, there's no like direct claim that like God even created the universe. It's just like it became, it was. And in Sikhi, it says that the universe started with a sound, you know, and it's called the Naad, N-A-A-D, which according to what science says is a big bang, and a big bang is a sound. It started with the sound. And so I think like Sikhi is in sync and compatible with like scientific beliefs, whereas like when you get into these Christian motherfuckers, you basically have to throw belief right out the window to believe this shit, which is why it does make you kind of stupid in general. But I guarantee some dude at in some point in this video is gonna be like, you don't need religion to be good. Someone's gonna make that argument 100%.
That's not a real claim. Let me give you an example. For example, there's a sub-narrative in the story of Moses where Moses is rewarded with a glimpse of God. Okay, and that's one of the ways that God is characterized in the Old Testament stories.
Yes.
Now Moses is a faithful servant of God.
There's no proof that Moses even existed. Like, this is just a story. And so Jordan Peterson is going to do his pseudo jiu-jitsu psychology crap and, you know, extrapolate the craziest meaning of Moses. This means that he was finally given a treat into looking into God because of what he did and the sacrifice he had to live and all this jiu-jitsu bullshit. When, you know, in my first year of university, my Jewish professor in Religion 101, I asked, I'm like, hey, is there any proof that Moses existed? And he's like, nope.
God and a good man. At least that's the case within the confines of the story.
One possible interpretation.
It's the case within the confines of the story, obviously.
Well, not obviously. When we look at the Bible can't precisely say anything because there are so many different exegetical and hermeneutic views of this particular book, and that everybody has everybody has disagreed historically on, it seems like, even the most benign detail about a book this big. And it seems like you can only...
Yeah, because the Bible is bullshit, right? Like, how is the fact that... So this guy, the atheist, has a point. He's right in his critiques of Peterson's religion, which is Christianity. He's right there. Where then he is wrong is that it's like they're both right and wrong simultaneously. He has the right arguments against Christianity. He studied it and he came to a natural conclusion using his brain that, hey, this is really a lot of bullshit. So he's right there. Peterson is right because he's basically going, your idea of God and these things are faulty, in which case you need to basically either change them or understand them better and interface in a way that does make a lot more sense. Peterson is wrong, though, because he's defending Christianity, and this guy's wrong because he's basically just trying to go, yo, nothing exists, nothing is real, there's no God, I believe in nothing. And then in which case, like, you know, Pascal's wager is like the best argument for like why you would want to believe in God, because like it's like the better side of the bet. Damn, this guy looks like he's had a rough life.
I don't know anything about the Polynesian deity Lono.
So you're rejecting something without knowledge of what you're rejecting.
I'm not rejecting it.
Whoa, what is that?
No more than I'm rejecting
believe in
anything that
Lono?
I don't know anything about.
Do you believe in Lono? Do you believe that he is a deity that exists in the world, exists in the universe, that exists?
This is such a stupid argument, bro. You could just make up anything and be like, I made up a god named Fofo. Do you believe in Fofo? Do you? Pagan pantheon of God thing is like I would say that one thing that all of humanity in the modern world has accepted is that there is only one God. And now like how you describe God or whatever is like a completely different thing. And this is why Sikhs just give up on that argument to be like, what is God? What is not God? Who is the Jordan Peterson up on? Javala, probably. This idea then that, God is this, God is that. Sikhs are just like, who gives a fuck? Why don't you just praise and give love to God? Remember God. If he can, make chocolate fudgesicles for you or, send your kids to school or, control the weather, that doesn't really matter. It's the relationship you have to God, not what God can do for you and what you believe that he can do. And I think that's like this whole like pantheonic, pagan multi-deity claim this guy's going after is just such a stupid argument. If somebody's going to make the best argument, it's basically going to be that Christianity is inherently wrong. Eastern philosophies have a better idea, but then like they wouldn't be considered atheists, right?
Exist in the existence of everything? Do you believe that Lono
I'll
is
answer
a
that
being?
question once you answer my question, which is, do I reject everything that I'm ignorant of? Because that's your presupposition that undergirds your argument, and unless you can prove that that's valid, then there's no point.
My question is quite simple.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean it's
believe-
formulated accurately.
Do you believe that Lono exists? Yes or no?
I'm not going to answer that question for the reasons I just described. You already.
This guy's so dumb. Like, this guy's actually such a dumb. He thought he was on Twitter for months waiting for this and thought he's like, I'm going to jiu-jitsu this guy. Because Richard Dawkins makes the same claim in his book. He goes, we are all atheists to some god, something along that line, some stupid shit like that. And he's making that argument.
Insisted that if I reject something, that if I'm ignorant of something, I reject it. Do you think that everyone in the world has to know everything simultaneously for that to be valid and true?
I think in order for your argument to be true, in order for it to be true that
See, Peterson just smoked him right there with that one. Peterson still got the jiu-jitsu. Don't get me wrong, but he's just, the ego got too fucking out of hand, which is what turned him into a little bit of a maroon.
the atheists don't understand what we're rejecting, then you need to also apply that to yourself and to Christians and to Muslims and to any other person on this earth, where if you don't understand what you're rejecting the belief in, then you can't reject the belief in it. That's the implication of your claim.
I didn't say that I rejected the belief in Lona. I said I didn't
Lono.
know who Lono was. I didn't say anything about rejecting.
That's because I've asked you several times and you haven't, but let me get to my even greater point.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying atheists don't understand what
This guy just blew his chance on making a good argument. This silky, weirdo-looking character.
religion is or what God is in order to be able to reject it fully or completely. We have someone over here who studied it in their own way. I've studied religion. I have a degree in religious studies, specialty in Christianity and Mediterranean traditions. And further than that, beyond me, Pew Research studies suggest that atheists and agnostics actually know more about religion and about religious stories, the foundational principles, than...
See, again, Westrick, what is the word? Western-centric worldview right here on full display. They have no fuck-all information about Eastern philosophy, Eastern religion, Dharma, Karam, the Khalsa, the Guru Granth Sahib, any of this stuff. They've never, ever interfaced with that. I've been chronically online for years. I've never seen Richard Dawkins. I've never seen Sam Harris or Christopher Hitchens, Jordan Peterson, any of these guys talk about Sikhs or talk extensively about Hindus or even talk extensively about Buddhism. The only thing I've ever heard about Buddhism was that Sam Harris was like, if I was going to pick a religion, I'd pick Buddhist. Other than that, nothing ever. And technically, Sam Harris is kind of on the Buddhist path. He has a fucking meditation app, for God's sake.
My next claim is that morality and purpose cannot be found within science.
Yeah, that claim right off rip is pretty. That claim is a pretty obvious one. I would agree with that. You can't figure out like who to love, etc., and all that stuff in science. They'll never. But
I dare you to let
God.
me build you a completely free e-commerce store preloaded with
What is up, Mr. Canada?
How you doing, man?
I'm doing great.
What's
How are
your
you?
name?
Brian. I think it's interesting that you say that morality and purpose can't be found in science. Actually,
No, within science.
sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Purpose, I actually grant you, because purpose is subjective, right? Unless you want to boil it down to the purpose of life is just to procreate, right? Sure, whatever. Morality is actually something that we do see. We actually have examples of Neanderthals, and older individuals found in a tribe, missing an arm, missing teeth, still alive somehow in his 40s, 50s, right? Typically, you're a Neanderthal, you can't eat, you can't hunt, you die, right? But we know that members of his tribe were taking care of him, right? So we know that at some level, early in our evolutionary history, we actually developed altruism. We have examples of chimpanzees who actually have a basic understanding of fairness, right? If you give...
yeah, but this is not saying that you find it within science. Like, there's no formula or mathematical analyses or something they could do that proves like a certain morality. You know, maybe that Neanderthal guy that they're talking about, maybe he was just super vibes and they wanted to keep him around. Like, that's a really weird point. I think, like, yeah, this guy's about to get cooked. I can guarantee this guy's about to get fucking cooked.
Chimpanzee 2 grapes, right? And his buddy gets 3, right?
Yeah.
He actually freaks out, right? But you give both chimps 3 grapes and they're good. We have examples of parrots.
Except for the greedy chimps.
Except for the greedy chimps.
They want 4 grapes.
They want 4 grapes. You know, those do exist, right? But we have similar examples where we do animal tests, right?
So morality is intrinsic.
I think
So it precedes science.
that actually
right?
a better way to define it would be that social animals, which we are, right,
Yeah.
require some level of morality or...
Into what? I'm not disagreeing.
Sure.
Why do they require that?
Because it's the only way that social groups can actually survive, right?
That's my point with
Sure.
regards to science. Thank you very much.
Is that...
Precisely the point that you just made, that science has to exist within a moral framework that isn't in itself scientific.
How's that not scientific?
Well, because it's not derived from the scientific process, as you just indicated.
It doesn't
by
need to derive
pointing
from the
to
scientific process.
Well,
It's
hang
the
on,
fact that
hang on a sec.
we are social animals, and we need that to exist as a group.
I
right?
agree, but
Sure.
you pointed to the morality of Neanderthals, to the morality of chimpanzees. They didn't derive that from science.
They don't need to. That's not how
That's
that
my
works.
point.
Science explains it. So you
No,
just,
science doesn't explain morality.
it doesn't explain how social animals would need to be...
Well, that's
altruistic.
a complicated question.
Is it? But we see it, though.
Yeah, but explaining the evolution of morality and explaining morality itself aren't the same thing.
Okay, so you're asking, why does this happen?
Yes, that's more accurate.
Because we're social animals, and we
Yeah,
need
but there's
to be...
more to it than that.
Is there?
Sure. For example, so we're moral animals that have a sense of the future.
Sure.
Okay, that makes us unique, and that structures our morality.
No, actually, there are other animals that can predict the future. Or not predict
really.
the future. No, tigers. Actually, there was a tiger at the SF Zoo that killed somebody. And so
Hunting
actually...
animals. Look,
No. Kids threw shit at the tiger. The tiger actually plotted its escape, and it found the
I'm not
kids.
saying that animals can't think.
Okay.
No, but
let's
they can
pause here.
perceive the future. That's what I'm saying.
Well-
Damn,
it out by the
he got
majority.
cooked. He got
Thank you,
cooked
man.
so
Good man.
fast.
Yeah.
He got cooked way too fast. What a goof. Oh, the guy who have morality. This might be the guy.
Particular, since you yourself are a Christian, right?
People debate about that, and I generally don't discuss it publicly.
Okay, I understand that. And me, myself, I am a former young earth creationist fundamentalist.
Oh, yeah.
So I have experience in this. I used to run a TikTok channel directed about apologetics about the Bible, specifically in this type of facet with morality, evolution and such, and going back and forth with that. So in the Bible, it talks a lot about slavery, right?
Yes.
Yes. So in that, it teaches you how to take care of a slave. Rather than saying slavery's wrong, I think
No,
it
it
should
says
say
that in the story of Moses.
says slavery is incorrect. It says
Well,
it's immoral.
that's why Moses leads his people away from slavery.
But why does the Bible predicate and tell people exactly how to take care of a slave? Isn't
Well,
that immoral? Wouldn't you say that culturally we've evolved as a species, as he said earlier about empathy?
Yeah, I would say that the reason we evolved, so to speak, away from slavery was because the West was founded on Judeo-Christian morality.
No, I don't believe that the West was founded on Judeo-Christian morality. That's a completely different argument because Roman law preceded, like, the Jews and Christians never got like a huge moment to shine as far as laws go, because the Hammurabi's code, the Roman 12 tablets or 12 tables, like they all existed, and then the Christians kind of added upon there, and so everyone constantly tries to frame it as Judeo-Christian, but like the way courts and all this stuff worked, that wasn't a Christian thing. The Western civilization, Socrates had a court case against him. Like there was a whole situation where that all existed before. So this claim that these people like to say that we're based off Judeo-Christian fundamental values, I would say is no. It's actually the fundamentally and at its core, it's Roman values that later on got these Christianized idealism slapped onto it. But I would say I don't agree with that supposition.
And the presumption that every person was made in the image of God. And so slavery itself became immoral, and that was established by Protestant Christians in the UK, who then convinced the UK government for 200 years to go to war on slavery.
And wouldn't you say that this is about the cultural evolution of humans in general, rather than just Christianity?
No, I think it's the flowering of the ideas that were embedded in the biblical texts across long spans of time.
I feel like this is just humans editing based on the cultural evolution of morality.
What do you mean by just?
Just?
Yeah, just humans.
Well, humans.
Editing.
Well, based on culture and history, right? We get better.
Well, they did do it based on culture and history, but culture and history have their foundations too. So.
Well, yeah, but we're talking about slavery. So many people bolstered it based on the Bible. Based on the Bible. They looked at it and they justified it in the United States and the Deep South. They justified slavery
but
based on the
the main thrust of Protestant thought in particular was stringent.
Yeah, but the thing is like Protestants are like an offshoot, a different sect within Christianity. And if their interpretation of the Bible became slavery is wrong, it wasn't a mainstream view held by mainstream Christians. Like they lobbied for what he said 200 years. Yeah, so like what? I'm not fully... I know the Protestants did this, but like in 200 years, they probably had to get into positions of power, suplex their way through society and get to places where they could enact this and actually like pressure the government to actually do something about it. But I guarantee you, if you go into the weeds, because again, like why would people do it? It's probably because it was either like economically not as beneficial to have slaves or do the slave trade, or they just couldn't compete. It was probably something like that. I don't think it was just because of the goodness of their heart. There's always some other reasoning. And this is me talking ignorantly, but like this is my bias against. And again, like these goofs are literally spending time debating about the morality of slavery in the Bible. First off, they're not even talking about the topic. The morality and purpose cannot be found within science.
Since you said morality and purpose cannot be found in science, it would just depend on like what you're referencing. If you're saying a description of your psychological preferences.
Yeah, okay. None of these guys have even like touched on that. Okay, like that first guy attempted to, and it just fucking fell apart.
Lie to like save your children, your mom, your dad.
I don't think lying would save them.
Can there ever be a circumstance logically that lying could save someone?
Yeah, and if you're steeped in sin, you're likely to live in circumstances like that.
I'll give you an example. If you're like in like Nazi Germany, and it is the case that there's like Jewish people in your attic and you're trying to protect them, would you lie to like the Nazis?
I would have done everything I bloody well could, so I wouldn't be in that situation to begin with. It's a hypothetical, and it's not answerable.
You can't answer hypotheticals?
No, I can't answer a hypothetical like that because it's far. Look.
A hypothetical is literally a hypothetical is the worst form of argument, because you can create any fucking scenario to try to prove your point. It doesn't actually have any bearing on reality.
Did you
Don't play games.
I'm not playing games. I'm just asking if you ate it.
If you present me with an intractable moral choice that's stripped of context and you back me into a corner, you're playing game. I just told you I would do everything that I could to make sure that I'm never in that situation. By the time you've got there, you've made so many mistakes that there's nothing you can do that isn't a sin.
Being born in Nazi Germany and trying to protect people that you care about, like there could be a Jewish friend that you have and you want to protect them.
I think you should
have
just
them in
give
your
up on
attic.
that line of questioning.
Give up on just like trying to clarify your position? Because you
I
don't
did
like, are you
clarify
like
it.
uncomfortable with me asking this question? It's just a basic hypothetical. Like I could ask you.
It's just a basic hypothetical where you put Jews' lives at stake in Nazi Germany. That's just a basic hypothetical.
Obviously, you would lie in that scenario to save their life, but you're like not trying to answer this question for some reason.
I just told you why.
Are you anti-fascist? Like, so you're
Why
anti-fascist?
are you asking that?
I was just asking, just clarifying. But like, okay, again, you're not answering this
guy's so
hypothetical because you know
retarded,
it
bro.
shows that you clearly would lie to save
I'm
someone's life.
answering it in
Obviously,
a
that's not
manner
what
you
truth
don't
is.
find acceptable.
Obviously, because I care about truth.
I wouldn't be in that scenario.
Obviously, right? Logically, because that's
No.
already happened. Like that's in the past. You don't have a time travel device. We're bringing this logical hypothetical up to show you that in some circumstances that do happen within the real world, you would lie to save people's lives. So your definition of truth isn't actually how we're typically using it. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to muddy the waters when I ask you, like, do you believe this? Do you think this to be true? So you don't actually have to answer the questions. And plenty of Christians don't like that because they clearly see that you don't really like want to be associated with
I can
Christianity. with that
imagine
respect.
that I was in a situation where the best I could do as a consequence of my previous mistakes was to tell the least amount of lie I could manage. But that would likely indicate that I had made all sorts of catastrophic errors on my way there.
So you would lie to save someone's life. So again, you do believe it to be true in that circumstance, even though you like lied in that scenario. So
No.
Okay, I need to see what else this guy just said. I skipped.
I
they're
would have done
asking-
everything else as fragmented, in which case you die.
it to be true.
All right, typical Christians.
Yeah, typically when I talk to Christians, they say that they believe in an
How
all-knowing.
about Cardinal Newman, who defined God as conscience? He's a major influence on all of Catholic social theory. How about that Christian?
Sure. So do you believe in the all-knowing, all-powerful, all-good notion of God?
What do you mean by believe?
Fuck this guy, bro. I hate when he does this.
Do you think it to be true?
That's the circular definition.
All right, fuck
In
this.
which case,
Everybody worships something, including atheists, even though they might not know it. Okay, yeah.
being atheists, even though they might not know it.
Hi.
Good
Giving black women some space.
work.
Thank you.
Hi there.
I'm Zena. So I want to start off with like defining terms.
Yep.
How do you define worship?
Prioritize.
Prioritize. So almost like having a preference over something rather than the
It's a
other.
hierarchy of preferences.
Yeah.
And you use it to direct your attention.
Right.
So whatever you're attending to, you're worshiping.
Right. So I've kind of become a little bit familiar with your idea of like this value-laden hierarchy.
Yeah.
Right. And you kind of posit that at the bottom of this hierarchy, or you could call it top or bottom, I
Yeah,
suppose.
right.
At the bottom of this hierarchy, this foundational priority in your life is going to be considered God.
That's
is that
right.
correct?
Yes.
Right. I'm trying to imagine a situation in which could there be that someone has a priority?
So far, like that first question, people tried to like debate the claim it was garbage. That last one, no one even really talked about science at all. They just fucking started yapping about random shit that had nothing to do with like it was just that was nothing.
At their foundation
A big nothing burger. Let's see how this one goes.
that is different from someone else's.
Oh, definitely.
Right. So we can have different conceptions of God.
That's why we fight.
Right. So essentially, there's not one God, but there are multiple gods, and these gods exist in some realm of truth. It's true that this person has one God and it exists.
Yeah, probably better to think about it as multiple values, but that there's a hierarchy of values with something at the bottom.
Right. But at the
Or
bottom is
top.
God, and there
That's
are
a definition, yeah.
Yeah, so at the bottom is God, and
Yeah.
there can be multiple people with different conceptions of God, and they're each valid in being called God. So there are multiple gods that exist.
It depends on what you mean by valid. So far, so good, but it depends on what you mean by valid, because I would say that some foundational conceptions don't play out when they're implemented. So if you put the wrong thing at the foundation, you end up in hell, for example. That's what happens in totalitarian states.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I hate her point so much. It's the Richard Dawkins, whatever. Everyone believes in their own God. I detest this point so much.
so you're
It's more so that everybody believes in God and their interpretation of what that God is different. But that doesn't mean people believe in different gods.
So they're not all equal. Like all foundational principles are not equal, even though they might be equally foundational. Right.
So what makes one kind of foundational?
Yeah, her argument is basically subjectivism. Like everyone has a subjective view of God, but she's taking it as that, oh, then many gods exist, because people would describe God in different ways, but people also have different intellects. People have different cultural backgrounds. People are different. You know, like this whole argument, the atheists are really doing themselves a disservice, because they're proving that the only thing that could actually talk against is Christianity, and they know all the parables and the gospels and the fucking stories and the books to be like, oh, it's full of so much shit, which I agree, but Peterson doesn't, that's where Peterson is wrong. But the fucking book is laden with so much bullshit, and so the atheists are getting caught up on that. But when it comes to these fundamental points that like Jordan's coming up with, like, hey, it's not you can't derive morality and purpose from science, then they just are fucking clapped in talking about it. And even like this situation right now, everybody worships something even though they might not know it.
Tenet like better than another one?
That's an excellent question. Iterability. Imagine that you play a game with someone and you're a kid. And it's fun. So then you play again and again and again.
So repetition.
It's playability across multiple iterations. So then you have a friend, and a friend is better than having a game, right? So that's one. Breadth of application is another. So if it's just for me now, it's not as good as something that would be benefit to both of us across time.
Right. So we're explaining like characteristics that can be applied to like these types of like foundational values. But why is it that this iterability makes it better? And what does better mean?
Well, one hallmark of better is likely to be selected voluntarily.
Right.
So it's invitational.
Another descriptive kind of quality. So we're talking about characteristics that in some type of system with a goal, an output.
I think this whole conversation, like, it's just so annoying that it's all fluff. It's like these atheists truly don't believe in anything and have no real points. Like this, like Peterson is smoking each one of them, and it's fucking annoying as fuck. Does he just talk to her for the rest of the time? Oh no.
Being like, we could as though is what could make these things, regardless of any system, right?
Well, imagine that you set up a system and you implement it, and it produces the opposite results to which you intend.
Which is the paradox that most of life and the world operates by, according to me.
Oh yeah, that's not a good system.
Exactly.
Right, so the foundational principles are lacking because when you implement them, the game degenerates instead of moving towards the aim.
Right, so we're talking about within a system. When we talk about something being moral, right, just absolutely moral, it means that without a system, right, this thing is simply moral with no reason. Like, stance independent, this thing is good. So I'm trying to figure out if such thing can exist. And if so, do you believe that these things are moral in of themselves, like self-evidently moral, or are they moral in accordance with the system?
I can't define them any more accurately than I already.
There's just so much jargon. Like, I don't even know what bullshit they're talking about. I feel like if I was going to make this argument, my argument would be everybody worships something, sure, and they might not know it, but doesn't necessarily mean it's God. You can worship something that's completely devoid of God and actually the antithesis of what God is, and not even it might not even be the devil. But yeah, you can worship it. But if even by Peterson's thing of prioritizing, like, you could have commemorated him on being like, yeah, I could prioritize something that has nothing to do with God, and that means like you don't like. That would have been my approach to this. But again, I don't, like, I'm not an atheist or nothing, but because, like, this is just a lot of fluff that I'm hearing. Like, I'm not hearing anything that's, like, getting to a real point. Well, this guy's a big asshole, I'm pretty sure. That's so embarrassing that you have to, like, run like that. Like, I would just sit there and be like, whatever, bro.
Hey, Dr. Peterson.
How you doing?
Danny, nice to meet you.
What's your name?
Danny.
Danny.
You're saying atheists worship things or people or places, whatever. Can you be very clear about your definition of worship again?
Attend to, prioritize, and sacrifice for.
Okay, that's it. That's your understanding of worship.
Well, I could flesh it out, but
It sounds like they're about to just get into a semantics battle, like, fucking instantly. Like, the fact that those are your words, all right, let me cook you.
that'll do for the time we have.
Okay, do Catholics attend to Mary?
Yes.
Okay, so do they fit that description of worship?
Yes.
So you would say Catholics and other people that revere Mary, like the Eastern Orthodox tradition, worship Mary.
Well, they might not put her in the highest
But
place.
you would put it that way.
No.
You just said it. Now you're taking it back.
There's
now?
still a hierarchy.
Okay, there's a hierarchy, but within the
There's something at the top.
All right, you can worship things
Mary
below.
is quite a ways up the hierarchy, but not at the top.
Let's go over your definition of worship again. What's your definition of worship?
Attend to.
Attend to.
Prioritize.
Do
And
Catholics
sacrifice for.
What do Catholics attend to? Do they prioritize Mary over all other human beings?
No, I didn't say overall, did I? I didn't add that to my definition.
You understand.
I said there was a hierarchy as well.
You attend to
So you can attend to something trivially, or you can attend to it deeply.
Okay, now you're.
Yeah, this is all just. There's no real debate happening here. It's just wordplay jiu-jitsu. And there was a philosopher. I think his name was Wittgenstein. This guy right here. This was basically like his argument was basically like he thought he figured out philosophy by basically being like all speech is words. Words are all anybody's definition. So it's all about definitions. Yeah, like that's basically this is all his argument was like it's all semantics. And so like and then he thought he figured it out, he dipped out, and then he finally came back. He's like, "Oh fuck. Like I was wrong. It's not just that." Fucking goofs.
You're adding stuff to the definition, but your original definition.
I added the hierarchy part at the beginning.
Are you
just
familiar?
didn't understand it.
Are you familiar with the Immaculate Conception?
Why is that relevant?
Because you go to a Catholic church, don't you? Or you've attended recently. You're interested in Catholicism, aren't you?
Sure.
All right. Are you familiar with their doctrines?
Somewhat.
Okay. You're
Their
familiar.
doctrines are very
how do they
deep.
regard Mary?
Why are you asking me that?
Because you're a Christian.
You say that. I haven't claimed that.
Oh, what is this? Is this Christians versus atheists?
I don't know.
You don't know where you are right now.
Don't be a smartass.
Well,
and I mean
either you're a Christian or you're not.
I won't talk to you if you're a smartass.
Oh, either you're a Christian or you're not. Which one is it?
I could be either of them, but I don't have to tell you.
You don't have to tell me. I was under the impression I was invited to talk to a Christian. Am I not talking to a Christian?
No, you were invited to.
I think everyone should look at the title of the YouTube channel. You're probably in the wrong YouTube video.
You're really quite something, you are.
Aren't I? But you're really quite nothing. Right? You're not a Christian.
Okay, I'm done with him.
This guy got flamed low key. Like Peterson didn't get. This kid got flamed because he was like a little spoiled brat, like a little fucking fudda, yo. Right,
Hi there.
Hi, nice to meet you.
What's your name?
Gerard.
Hello, Gerard.
Nice to meet you, sir. So you've said that worship is when you prioritize and sacrifice for something, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But there's a hierarchy in there.
Sure. So I prioritize and sacrifice for my wife more than I would prioritize and sacrifice for a random person on the street, right?
Probably, yeah.
Presumably. Do I worship
I don't know.
my
I've
wife?
seen some pretty bad marriages.
Assuming a good marriage.
He didn't cook Peterson, but he got it. That was a Twitter gotcha moment. To like a kid, that's like, ooh, but to me, it's like that guy wasted his time. He just wanted to try to flame Peterson, and he basically wanted to. That guy, if Peterson fell into his trap, his trap was gonna be this. Oh, you're a Christian. You believe in the Immaculate Conception. You think that's possible? It's not possible. So how could you possibly worship that? You're crazy. Like it would have been some dumb shit like that.
Are you saying I worship my wife?
I'm trying to define worship.
Well, that's what I'm asking. So prioritize and sacrifice. I do
the
those
higher
things.
it is in the hierarchy, the more what you're doing is akin to worship. But even in your trivial acts of attention, you're prioritizing and partaking in worship, even if you don't know it.
So I am
And it's
prioritizing.
partly, well, with regard to your wife, say. So why do you value?
See, there's is funny thing because in Sikhi, like there is a sense of like you do seva for others because you see God within them. And so like you essentially, it is like a worship. It's not like you're worshiping them and thinking they are God, but you prioritize the wellness of other people, including your people around you, but like anyone who's not you is other, and you also sacrifice for them because you believe that God is within them and resides within them because God is ever pervasive. What's the word? Something permissive. And so like again, like they don't have these. It's so funny. It's like Christianity is like addition. And Sikhi is like advanced calculus in the world of spirituality. That's the best way I could explain this. Like these guys are like, do I worship my wife? Do I worship her? Because I prioritize her and I sacrifice for her. Like, these are just such dumb arguments. Atheists accept Christian morality, but deny the religion's foundational stories. Oh my God, this one's gonna be so fucking whack.
Morality.
Very nice. I'm Ian.
Hi, Ian.
Yes. So God says that you can own people as property. He says that you can beat them with a rod too. He commands genocide in Deuteronomy, in Numbers, and in Samuel. I mean, they have a goddamn baby barbecue in Numbers. Like, is all of this in line with Christian ethics?
No.
So then God doesn't fit within Christian ethics.
Well, the biblical library is a continuous.
He just cooked him right there on Christianity. That's the only, like, oh fuck, he got you.
Continuing story, and everything written in it has to be contextualized by the entire text. There's 65,000 hyperlinks in the biblical text. And you can take pieces of it out of context and criticize them, and that's what you're doing. But that's a mistake. I think it's an analytic mistake because you're putting the cart before the horse.
I really don't think so. I think that if we say that something is Christian ethics, then I think that all of the books essential to Christianity would fit with it, especially if it's like the main character. When we're talking about
How do you deal
God,
with the morality of war?
So
how do you think you should deal with the morality of war?
Sure. Because I feel like the morality, like I feel like Christian ethics, like this is kind of, I guess I just think it's like kind of an absurdity to say that God doesn't fit within Christian ethics, but sure, well, we can go on my ethics. That's totally fine.
I don't know what you mean by an absurdity. What game are you playing with?
Well, I just think.
I don't know. Now he just kind of going a little lulu lala with that. That he practiced those first points, but then once Peterson started sparring with them a little bit with the words, this guy seems like he's fucking kind of losing it now.
That it's an absurdity to say that the Christian God doesn't fit within Christian ethics, that like the Christian God isn't like Christian ethical.
I said that the specific statements that you made don't take the context of the stories into account, and so that your analytical approach is faulty.
Sure.
Don't put words in my mouth.
Sure, then let's go through the example. Yeah, so, and I apologize. So let's go through the example. So in 1 Samuel 15:3, God says, go and slaughter the Amalekites, slaughter the men, the women, the children, the infants. What's the justification for that? Is that in line with Christian ethics?
That's a good question. I don't.
What the fuck? That's a good question. This is such a stupid, like, what? That's a good question. Obviously, dude, like, see, even war and all that is really well talked about in Sikhi, Jung, Yud, the fight for righteousness. You only fight when you're attacked. You never try to conquer. That's why the Sikhs have never had this crazy, under like purest times of Sikhs, have never had like crazy conquering phases where they just ransacked everybody.
Really know what to do with the terrible, blood-soaked, saturated history of the human past. I don't know. And I don't think anybody knows. I mean, what you try to do in your own life, as far as I can tell, is to conduct yourself in a manner that makes such things much more unlikely.
I totally agree.
We're all saddled with the problem of the catastrophes that got us here, aren't we?
Yeah, but this one was commanded by God. That's the problem.
Yeah,
That's what differentiates it from anything else, is that this one, it's God saying, go and do this atrocity.
Do you think that there's ever such a thing as a righteous war?
I'm skeptical. I'm not sure. It would probably be situational.
Well, right, fair enough.
Yeah, but this one certainly wasn't a just war. The context for the Amalekite slaughter is that 400 years earlier, they fought one battle, which they lost, and God says, that's it, I'm going to wipe them off the face of the goddamn earth. And then 400 years later, he commands the Israelites to genocide their great-great-great-great-great-great-grandchildren. That's not a just war at all. And also, a genocide is not a war.
Well, a genocide can be a war, but...
Absolutely not. Look, the genociding of the Amalekites, the men, the women, and the infants, that's not a war. The infants aren't combatants.
Look, I already said that it's very...
Peterson is getting cooked right now. Now Peterson is like this guy's showing that it's almost that he knows more about the Bible than Peterson does. He's getting cooked right now. Peterson isn't even pulling out, well, what do we mean by genocide? And this guy's like straight fucking... Everybody else jargon and just fucking random retardo shit. This guy's coming with some bangers right now.
Very difficult to look at the blood-soaked past and to know exactly what to do about it. The answer I gave to the gentleman who is sitting here before you is that it's necessary to read a text like the Bible at all of its levels of analysis simultaneously. And there's a directional morality that emerges across time, that has its roots in the Old Testament, for example, with its restrictions against murder specifically, that makes itself manifest in the Christian texts as the insistence on voluntary self-sacrifice as the foundational belief. That's a profoundly anti-violence ethos.
Do you have the belief in your theology?
Well, what do you think of that? Wait a sec. Now, address what I just said.
So I'm about to address it, but I'm addressing it with a question. Do you think that God is, by his very essence, perfect?
You'll have to provide more.
Sure, just like maximally great and all like the great making qualities.
Sure.
Yeah, like flawless. Yeah. So,
okay,
so does a flawless thing change? Does a flawless thing reveal like more and better information over time, or would a flawless thing say, here's what's good, here is the absolute good thing to do at all circumstances in time?
Well, we know some of that.
Wait,
Tell
so
the truth. That's one.
That's totally fine, but presumably...
No. You don't get to skate over that. That's totally fine.
It's a straw man of my position. It's a straw man of the argument. So the argument is that God...
Wait a sec. You said find one maxim that's transcendent across situations.
I didn't say any of those words. I'm not sure what conversation you're a part of.
Don't be a smartass.
I'm sorry.
Seriously. I mean it. If we're going to have a serious conversation, conduct yourself properly. Okay. Rephrase your question so that, because I must have missed it. I tried to answer it.
So in my mind, I guess by my lights, a perfect being doesn't change. A perfect being, if they're maximally good, maximally moral...
Does our understanding of the perfect being change?
Our understanding might, but presumably what the perfect being is revealing...
Well, I agree. How do we distinguish between that, though, at the human level?
How do we distinguish between whether...
Between our transforming understanding of perfection and perfection itself.
Between our...
We can only... Yeah, well, we can only see through our own lenses.
Presumably a perfect being would be revealing all of these aspects all the time, especially if God's outside of time. I don't know how a God who's outside of time is revealing different things at different times. That just seems like incoherent to me.
Imagine something that's perfect.
Sure.
And complete.
Sure.
Okay, and it's trying to communicate with creatures who are anything but that.
Sure.
Well, they're going to get it wrong.
Sure.
Okay, now wait a sec. Do you blame that on the interpreters or the phenomena itself?
For
example, are you perfect in attending to your conscience?
Hold on. At the point in time when God is literally the one who created us, he could have created us in a way where we would always be receptive to these principles, where we don't have to go across like a learning curve where, maybe we'll understand.
This whole creator God shit is like just so, like, I hate that argument, man, so much.
Maintain free will.
Thousands of years.
But this guy is doing the best. This super nerdy dude is with this like really weird outfit on is Peterson's closest match right now.
There's thousands of years into the future, maybe we'll do it. Oh, also, if you believe in an all-knowing God, then free will is impossible. Because
wait a sec. Let's not go to that
because
yet.
you threw free will into the mix.
Well, that was the answer to your question.
Yeah, and
you said, why wouldn't God? Well,
it's
1,000 years of deep thinking philosophers would disagree with you. But
and 1,000 years of, or at least like the last 50 years of philosophers would disagree with you. These analytic philosophers, people like Graham Oppie make arguments about the incompatibility of omniscience and free will, that if God created this world, if he chose this world instead of that world, then he makes it causally inevitable every single action that you are going to make.
But I just don't like this guy's doing, he's doing a good job of meeting Peterson with the Christian whatever and basically debating theology. Like, that's how this guy's winning,
If he made a world where we were just electrons in love, then none of this would have happened. But by making us in this world, knowing exactly what's going to happen in the future, it makes all of those events inevitable, which means that they're all causally determined, which means that we have no free will. If you believe in an all-good God or an all-knowing God that made everything.
Well, have it your way.
Okay, cool. So then the free will theodicy fails.
Well, it fails for you. That doesn't mean you've disproved it. I mean,
Do you want to
tried
respond
to
to
make
the argument?
Yes, you tried to make a case for a causally deterministic universe. I don't think there's any evidence for that at all.
Do you think that God could have created a different universe than the one that he created?
Yeah, see, now I was like, just fuck
that.
that.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm fucking done with this. Basically, my takeaway is that Jordan Peterson debates in semantics. Christianity is pretty stupid, and like it's also kind of like another thing I'm getting is like it just swallowed up so much belief from so many other things that it's like amalgamated, and like you can, if you're a good enough mental jiu-jitsu guy, like look at this guy's stank face. You can use any story or parable to your advantage But that one kid who's basically the Amalekites or whatever were genocided by the Christians or the Jews or whatever. Like, yeah, like a lot of the Bible's history is soaked in like unjust righteousness and like injustice. And so and they frame it as if like they were doing the right thing, which was like an Abrahamic equality. And also, I just don't think that like the Bible is that amazing of a text. Like, it'd be really interesting to see what Jordan Peterson, how he would have to interplay with the Guru Granth Sahib, because it's just esoteric knowledge. And I think that he might just kind of be at like a standstill, because he uses like psychology, but with something that's just pure esoteric knowledge. Like, how would you interface with something that deep? You know, there's certain lines in there. It's like, you can't be like, oh, well, like, you know, the guru was saying this because he was a vagabond and blah, blah, blah. Like, you can't use the battle of semantics in that situation. But overall, like, the atheists were cooked. They didn't really have any good points. They kind of caught him on a little bit of like, yo, Christianity is stupid. But like most of the other points, like, it kind of seems like atheists are like, and look at like all of their ages. Like, they all kind of just like want to be, they're like wannabes of like, they're like edgelord wannabes. That's about it. That's kind of my takeaway from that. It wasn't that great. I know there's a bunch of other Jubilee videos. Let's see what the comments are saying. Yeah, what do you mean by Jordan Peterson? See, after each round, everyone should shift 2 seats around the circle. Yeah, they changed the title. One Christian. Okay. Jordan Peterson is me when I want to add more convoluted words to my essay. Yeah. I can't wait for 90 minutes of but what is the definition of Christian? Facts. A guy that loves the idea of Christianity versus 20 atheists. That's pretty factual. 1 gorilla versus 100 men. Win Jubilee. Atheist, what's your point? Well, if you consider the metaphysical substrate of narrative hierarchies. Yeah, it's just a lot of word salad. I don't think like you can actually come away from this thinking like, wow, Christianity is so amazing. I think you come away thinking like Jordan Peterson is a wordsmith. It's almost like he's a fucking psychological rapper. And then all these kids are kind of like delusional. Like, everyone is stupid in this video. I don't think anybody had anything interesting or of intelligence to say. I also think like from all their other videos that like if you're the guy in the middle,
he's not necessarily
you end up getting so fucking cooked.